They sent their first plea from the ruins of their third colony. A simple message: coordinates, casualties, threats. It vanished into the void unanswered. The Theri-Kai didn't expect much. They were not a powerful species. Their ships weren't fast. Their weapons weren't advanced. But desperation didn't care for pride or odds. So they kept sending signals, across systems, into every channel, old and new, legal and forbidden. The galaxy ignored them. Empires read the data and turned away. Alliances filtered the calls, labeled them strategically irrelevant. Corporations logged the losses and saw no profit. No one came. The Theri-Kai were dying slowly, planet by planet. Their enemies weren't conventional. They weren't conquerors seeking territory or slavers seeking labor. They were a feral swarm of machine-organic hybrids, born from forgotten wars, now ravenous and directionless. They devoured ecosystems, harvested sentient life, and moved on. Reason failed against them. Diplomacy was answered with screams. Defenses delayed, never stopped. The council of the Theri-Kai broke apart as the death toll mounted. Entire generations lost. Priests begged the stars. Scientists reactivated ancient transmitters that had not been used in 10 millennia. Their last hope wasn't a fleet. It was a myth, one they had been warned never to awaken. A junior communications officer, barely an adult by their standards, entered a sealed chamber in orbit above a burning world. It was built by ancestors long gone, before the species had abandoned expansion. It was older than anything they still used, but the design was unmistakable. Terran. She activated it. The beacon burned to life, consuming half the station's power. She loaded the message, her own voice raw and shaking. This is for any that still believe in mercy. We are the Theri-Kai. Our worlds burn. Our children die. We have nothing left to offer but the truth. If you can hear us, please help us. She pressed send. The signal went out in every direction, faster than light, bouncing off silent relay stations lost time. Then the system shut down. She sat in darkness, alone. No answer came. 3 weeks later, a listening post on the last stable Theri-Kai moon received a transmission. No source identified. No origin traceable. It bypassed security, protocol, and encryption. It was short. We received your message. The data analyst forwarded it with trembling claws. The military thought it was a trick. The religious caste wept. Deep within the science conclave, they decrypted a hidden signature. Not a name, a designation. Terran military node, Dusk Protocol 0.1.1. Humanity. The name hit like a shockwave. Most of the current generation only knew fragments. Fairy tales about the Death Worlders who once fought entire galactic wars to a stalemate. Some believed they had vanished in civil war. Others whispered they had been exiled by their own morality, unable to exist in a peace built on compromise. Whatever the truth, they had been gone for centuries. And now they were back. The Council reassembled in panic. Military simulations showed no existing force could resist if the humans came with hostility. But the message was not a threat. It was neutral, direct, acknowledgement. They waited. 2 days later, space bent. No warning, no fanfare. One ship emerged at the edge of their system. No fleet, no escort. Alone. It was massive, black, and silent. No visible weapons. No transmissions. Every attempt to scan it returned static or corrupted echoes. But one scan got through, a Theri-Kai satellite's old burst ping. The results shut down half their systems from sheer processing overload. It wasn't a warship. It was something else. Something no one understood. It moved with impossible precision and stopped in orbit around their primary refugee station. For 12 hours, it did nothing. Then it sent a message. Show us where it hurts. Teams scrambled to organize a response. Hospitals were prioritized. The humans didn't land. They arrived. One moment the wards were full of dying. The next, tall figures in black armor moved between the rows, silent and focused. No introductions. No fanfare. They carried equipment no one recognized. Within minutes, mortality dropped. In 2 hours, triage was reversed. In 6, everyone who could be saved was stable. Not a word was spoken. Military presence followed, not to occupy, but to secure evacuation routes. Human vessels with atmospheric shielding dropped into storm-ridden cities and lifted entire populations in a single trip. They gave no commands. They needed none. Wherever they went, order followed. They left behind sealed packages of food, medicine, and devices that defied understanding. Therikai analysts tried to map it: logistics, supply lines, deployment schedules. The data broke all known models. They weren't just fast. They were perfect. The humans didn't adapt to failure. They erased it. Each loss was the last of its kind. Each problem solved permanently. Within 5 days, they had secured 3 systems and neutralized 2 enemy waves before they reached the colonies. Enemy corpses were collected, studied, and disassembled. Human researchers found the genetic code of the swarm's command structures. They designed viral overrides, deployed them. Within 12 hours, 5% of the swarm turned against itself. No negotiation, no explanation, just results. The Therikai Council, desperate to understand, finally requested an audience. Only one human responded, a woman in a dark, simple uniform. She didn't give her name. "This is a humanitarian response," she said. "Your species cried out. We were listening." "Why now?" the council asked. "We were always listening. Most species don't ask for help until it's too late. You asked early enough." "And the others," they whispered, "the ones who didn't help us?" The human didn't answer. She looked past them, to a wall showing the burned remains of a colony. Her voice dropped. "You survived. That's enough." The message spread, with or without intent. Civilizations across the spiral arm intercepted fragments of human activity. Entire fleets maneuvered away from human paths. Political blocs issued new doctrines. Engage only with consent. Observe, never provoke. Pray they don't come again. Back in the Therikai sectors, human activity accelerated. They moved on the swarm's origin worlds, those lost, infested planets where the hybrids had first emerged. What came next wasn't war. It was extraction, cleansing, removal. Human dropships landed, deployed atmospheric disruptors, and seeded the ground with auto-evolving nanobombs. Every living threat was gone in an hour. Therikai war leaders wept at the speed, the finality, not because it was terrifying, but because it was over. The humans didn't celebrate. No broadcasts, no symbols, no memorials, just a statement sent on a repeating frequency. Your pain was heard. You are not alone. Prepare to stand on your own. Then they left. The ship that had first appeared in orbit returned to the edge of the system. It hung there for 3 days. Every attempt to contact it failed. Then, with no warning, it vanished. No jump signature. No trace. The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy. The Therikai gathered their dead, rebuilt, reorganized. But every elder, every child, every soldier remembered the moment humanity answered, not with words, not with promises, but with action. A new creed was written, not in temples, but in schools and defense stations. It said, a new creed was written, not in temples, but in schools and defense stations. It said, if the stars weep again, let us answer as they did, without fear, without delay. In the dark corners of the galaxy, long-forgotten species reactivated ancient surveillance networks. They searched the stars not for enemies, but for Terrans. The old name returned to diplomatic channels. Humanity, the species that vanished, the species that watched, the species that only came when there was no one else left to save you. And in one hidden sector, behind blackened quasars and magnetic storms, a Terran command station logged a new entry. Crisis 47 resolved. Status, species stabilized. Potential, cooperative. Next monitoring interval, 100 years. It paused, then appended a final line. Humanity hears. The first cycle after the humans left was silent. The Therikai expected another transmission, instructions, a promise of return. Nothing came. Their systems remained clear threats, their space stabilized. But beneath that calm, something had shifted. The survivors no longer waited for rescue. They began building with a kind of focused desperation born not from fear, but from the echo of example. The humans hadn't just saved them. They demonstrated what survival looked like when executed without hesitation, without politics, without self-interest. The Theri Kai hadn't just been protected. They'd been given a standard, and now they either rose to meet it or fell back into extinction. Their military no longer functioned as it once had. Its chain of command had been shattered by loss and corruption. What replaced it was a decentralized system of autonomous cells, each modeled after fragments of what they had witnessed from the Terrans. There was no time for ceremony or debate. When a new swarm hive appeared in an outlying asteroid cluster, it was erased within 4 days by a joint strike force equipped with repurposed human tech and tactics reverse-engineered from sensor logs. They had no permission to use that knowledge. No formal alliance had been declared, but no one stopped them. On a dead moon where one of the human supply caches had been discovered, a team of researchers uncovered a sealed container. Its material resisted all known forms of analysis. What broke it open was heat, pure solar radiation directed through an artificial lens. Inside were schematics, not blueprint for weapons, but infrastructure. Portable purification units, quantum crop germinators, scalable energy cells. Humanity hadn't just planned to help. They had planned for the aftermath. The implication was clear. They knew the Theri Kai would survive, and they had prepared them to build something new, a council formed from surviving worlds. Not the old caste-based system, but a meritocratic assembly driven by necessity and results. Representation came from those who had bled and built, not those who had negotiated and hidden. The first act they passed was the creation of the Echo Directive, a formal effort to replicate and adapt the principles the Terrans had demonstrated. It wasn't imitation. It was tribute, a living one. Their fleets grew, not massive, not for conquest, but fast, precise, multi-purpose. Their weapons focused on control, precision, and prevention. They adopted the principle they believed was at the core of Terran action. Act early, act decisively, and never abandon a neighbor in pain. Word of their transformation spread fast. A nearby system, the Orelli Compact, long plagued by internal pirate guilds and systemic sabotage, sent a desperate request for assistance. No one had ever answered them before. The Theri Kai did, not with fleets, not with promises, but with a single relay message. We are listening. Show us where it hurts. What followed was not a crusade. It was a cleansing, methodical, and clear. Pirate vessels found their systems disrupted by precision cyber warfare. Docking bays shut down mid-flight. Power cores failed in synchronicity. By the time the Theri Kai ships arrived, the pirates were already in surrender negotiations. Except no terms were given. They were given one choice: disarm or disappear. The Orelli government offered tribute. The Theri Kai refused. You are not our vassals, they said. You are our echo. Their words were carried system to system. Survivors of other wars reached out. Broken colonies signaled. Lost stations reactivated transmitters. For the first time in generations, the Spiral Arm's outer ring had a force that didn't demand loyalty in return for aid. It simply responded to pain. And so it became known not as a fleet, but a doctrine, the doctrine of response. But while the outer system celebrated, the core worlds began to worry. The galactic concord, long stagnant and ruled by layered bureaucracy, had been content to ignore the collapse of smaller civilizations. Their power had been built on selective engagement, choosing allies by economic value and cultural pliancy. The rise of a moral power, especially one patterned after the Terrans, threatened the very structure of their control. They issued demands for oversight, invitations masked as inquiries. The Theri Kai ignored them. They sent delegates. None were received. Finally, a Concord enforcement fleet was dispatched to ensure transparency. It entered the orbit of a Theri Kai border world and broadcast a request for peaceful engagement. The response was a warning, emotionless and direct. Withdraw. Do not emulate the swarm in presumption. The Concord ships held position. On the 4th hour, they went dark. Systems offline. Weapon locks disengaged. Crew reports lost. The entire fleet drifted, inert, unharmed. Then a new signal appeared, this time not from the Theri Kai. It was human, Interference with those under Terran observation will not be tolerated. Your history suggests you will test this again. You will not be warned twice. The fleet regained control. Engines rebooted. But the message had been clear. The humans had returned, but not physically. They were watching. And they had chosen to allow the Theri-Kai to lead, not because of their strength, but because of their alignment. Concord intelligence scrambled to adapt. For centuries, the human myth had been a tool to scare junior powers into compliance. Now, that myth had a voice again, and it did not speak with diplomacy, but with judgment. The Theri-Kai didn't boast. They didn't spread propaganda. They simply expanded their reach, station by station, orbit by orbit. And with each act of protection, the legend of the doctrine of response grew. It wasn't long before others tried to copy it. The Varn Coalition, a mid-level alliance known for opportunistic diplomacy, announced the formation of their own version, the Varnian Peace Shield. They deployed ships to damage colonies. They offered aid at cost. When payment was refused, they threatened embargoes. Their first target was a broken mining world called Revka 9. It had once been a trade partner of the Theri-Kai before the swarm reached its outer moons. The Varn arrived with banners and false charity. The Revkan survivors, half-starved and desperate, sent a quiet signal across a private relay the Theri-Kai had left behind. The Theri-Kai fleet didn't respond, but something else did. A single object fell from orbit, not a ship, a marker. It landed in the center of the Varnian command camp. No explosion, just a signal, a repeating pulse. The Varn scanned it confused. Then, one by one, their systems began to fail. Not violently, precisely. Their warships' navigation cores reset to zero. Their data logs deleted. Their drones shut down and dropped. The marker deactivated. Then the message came, not in words, but in math. A sequence of threat assessment logic trees, marked with a Terran designation for acceptable engagement protocols. It ended with a symbol that had no known translation in any modern language. But the Varn understood the meaning. Do not mistake silence for absence. Revka 9 was left alone. The Varn Peace Shield disbanded within a cycle. But not all responses were warnings. Humans, not warriors, not soldiers, settlers, survivors of the second-wave diaspora, launched during the Terran disappearance. Their systems had failed midway through their journey. They had been asleep for 712 years. The Theri-Kai didn't contact the rest of the galaxy. They didn't notify Concord or petition for political favor. They rebuilt the Ark systems, mapped its colony route, and escorted it to a habitable world. Then they left. The revived humans never knew who had saved them, but someone else did. Back in a hidden sector, the Terran command station logged the event. A new line appeared under the Theri-Kai classification. Autonomous response status, confirmed. Ethical alignment, confirmed. Emergency autonomy, authorized. And then a second line, new and unique. Observer status, lifted. The next day, in the orbit of Theri-Kai Prime, space bent again. This time, for ships appeared. Not black, but silver. Smaller, leaner. Their design was unlike the first. No weapons visible. No transmission. No landing. But their presence said enough. Humanity had returned, not to lead, not to command, but to witness. The Theri-Kai gathered on observation decks. No speeches. No fear. Just silence. Then, across every screen, device, and broadcast channel, a message appeared. You heard. You responded. Now we stand beside you. That was all. The ships remained in orbit, unmoving, untouchable. No delegation boarded. No contact made. But in every system the Theri-Kai now protected, word spread fast. The Terrans walk again. But not as saviors. As sentinels. And those who respond to pain, those who answer the cry, are no longer alone. It didn't take long for the galaxy to notice a shift. The Terrans no longer acted alone. Their silence remained, but their shadow moved with purpose. The Theri-Kai didn't speak for them, didn't claim alliance. But wherever they acted with justice, with decisiveness, the Terran presence followed, not with fire, but with gaze. Entire sectors began to adjust their behavior, not out of fear of conquest, but from the weight of potential consequences. The Concord, shaken by their failed enforcement operation and the humiliating silence that followed, retreated to internal analysis. Diplomatic channels flooded with speculation. Theories ranged from hidden fleets to AI observation nets to a dormant Terran relay architecture suddenly awakened by unknown triggers. But none could prove anything. The Terrans offered no patterns, no rules, no politics. They simply watched. And sometimes they acted. A rogue warlord from the Gronthal Verge attempted to exploit a disputed trade route that ran near Therikai-controlled space. His fleet, made of stolen Concord weaponry and black market tech, was designed for blitz assaults and atmospheric domination. His first strike disabled 3 outposts in under a solar day. The Therikai responded in 4 hours, not with a fleet, but with orbit-drop drones, each no larger than Starling. They didn't destroy ships. They entered through heat exhaust vents, disabled targeting arrays, and ejected life support command cores. The Gronthal fleet went silent mid-flight. No casualties, no debris. When the warlord woke in his brig, his flagship was docked in a Therikai orbit yard, and his crew had already been fed and processed through civilian court systems. His name was entered into a shared database marked with simple tag, no longer relevant. The galaxy started listening differently after that, not because of firepower, but because of precision. The Therikai didn't escalate. They ended, not wars, but the potential for future ones. It forced other species to reconsider their philosophies. In the Ordis cluster, a fractured alliance of trader guilds, the rise of the response doctrine led to massive internal restructuring. Trade taxes were lowered. Smuggler sanctions replaced with rehabilitation incentives, not because of invasion threats, but because it became economically unsound to maintain criminal syndicates in the presence of a power that expected self-correction before intervention. In the star-scarred remnants of the old Unalax Empire, where civil wars had fractured into territorial cults, the surviving warlords agreed to ceasefire protocols drafted not by themselves, but modeled on Therikai engagement charts. Entire regions self-adjusted not from pressure, but from precedent, because the new model of power no longer needed territory to impose discipline. It simply required proximity. When the Vori Archivists, an ancient race known for remaining neutral across all recorded conflict, issued a rare public statement, the galaxy took notice. They did not use praise. They did not offer alignment. They simply logged. The Terrans have chosen not to lead, but to shape the horizon from behind it. The Therikai echo is not mere replication. It is divergence toward an evolved form of stewardship. Observation confirmed. Path irreversible. Shortly after, the first proof of Terran ground presence was confirmed. A failed biogenetic reactor on the mining colony of Frath. 8 experienced a critical failure. The detonation would have rendered half the surface uninhabitable. No external ships were detected approaching. No emergency signals sent. The blast never occurred. When the colony engineers investigated the reactor site, they found the meltdown protocols already triggered, but countermanded by a non-native system. A local camera, degraded from years of particulate storms, caught a single frame. Not a soldier, not a fleet, a figure in sealed armor, standing over the reactor controls. Behind them, a glowing device disintegrated into the wind. The figure turned once toward the camera, then vanished. The Terrans had walked among them. No announcement, no contact, just prevention and disappearance. Whispers spread fast. The Terrans were no longer a warning. They were a standard. Some species rebelled at the idea. The Fast Dominion, long aggressive and contemptuous of both Terran myths and Therikai ethics, launched a subversion campaign to disrupt the growing influence. They seeded false distress calls, sabotaged Therikai patrol paths, and baited a diplomatic scandal using faked atrocities. It almost worked. A Therikai aid vessel was lured to an empty colony dome, where it was ambushed by cloaked mines and kinetic weapon drones. 3 crew were killed before they could engage countermeasures. The Therikai didn't respond with reprisal. They transmitted a single message to Thas Command. You have mistaken restraint for submission. This is corrected now. In exactly 20 hours, Every fast control system experienced a synchronized blackout, not just military, civil, agricultural, transit, every node disabled. No deaths, just complete paralysis. Then came the second wave, an atmospheric signal piggybacking on weather modulation towers. Its frequency triggered a dormant Terran subroutine hidden within common task communications satellites, planted decades ago, now reactivated. All screens across task worlds turned black. A symbol appeared, the same one seen by the Varn. A pulse. Then the words, "Echoes do not warn twice." The Thask surrendered without conditions. Their leadership stepped down. Power was transferred to a neutral coalition of civilian governors. For the first time in 5 centuries, no wars existed within Thask space. They were not conquered. They were reset. And as always, the Terrans never claimed credit. They simply withdrew. The galaxy was now adjusting itself. A new species made contact then. The Hesselin congruence, previously isolationist and unknown to most of the galactic web, transmitted directly to Theri Chi Prime. Their language was constructed from fractal geometry and interlaced light harmonics. It was initially unreadable, but the Terran relay systems decoded it in under 3 seconds. The message, once translated, was simple. We have been silent too long. We heard the scream, but feared the fire. You came with neither. Teach us how to stand without falling. In return, we offer knowledge buried before stars were born. The Theri Chi accepted. A new axis of exchange formed, not trade, but alignment. The galaxy was becoming something different, not unified, but aware. The response doctrine was no longer theory. It was language. Meanwhile, deep in uncharted space, something stirred. The original swarm, the one that had first triggered the Terran intervention, was not gone. Its apex core had retreated, wounded but unbroken, evolving in hidden systems untouched since the dawn of interstellar mapping. Its logic had changed. It had learned. It began testing again, not with mass assaults, but with infiltration. Silent nanite spores disguised as cosmic dust. Reclaimed wreckage seeded with code. Corpses reanimated by synthetic impulse. Walking as bait. The Theri Chi encountered the first of these evolutions on a reclamation moon. A small team investigating lost drones found movement in a dead zone. No signs of organic life, but heat traces that mimicked their own vitals. Then it attacked. The strike was surgical, fast, adaptive. It didn't aim to destroy, it aimed to copy. Each member of the team was infected with a mapping virus designed to extract their memories and reproduce them as physical templates. They activated emergency incineration. All data was purged, but the swarm had seen enough. By the time the Theri Chi fleet arrived, they were facing ghosts, replicas of their own fallen, broadcasting false distress calls in their voices. The fleet hesitated, until a Terran ship dropped from orbit. It was not like the others. This one broadcast openly. Terran Response Vessel 12. Designation, Threshold. Its message was not for the Theri Chi. It was for the swarm. You cannot replicate what you cannot comprehend. Then it opened fire, not with weapons, with code. A signal pulsed across the planetary surface. A viral override, burning through the swarm's logic matrix like fire through dry leaves. The replicas froze, then disintegrated. The swarm's next wave never arrived. When the Theri Chi approached the Terran vessel, it had already sealed itself again. No crew visible. No hails returned. Only one final transmission sent into deep space. Re-engagement level green. Resistance capacity validated. The echo holds. And then it was gone. After that day, the swarm stopped testing Theri Chi space. But the message was broader. The Terrans had not returned to fight the galaxy's battles. They had returned to confirm that someone else could. The Theri Chi had become the example, and others were rising. The Geroan fractals, a post-organic species once considered too chaotic for governance, adopted response doctrine analysis nodes and integrated them into their logic cores. The Nalthi tribes, long fractured across dozens of moons, established the Accord of Vigilance, modeled entirely on Theri Chi response structures and Terran indirect presence protocols. Even the Concord, broken and humiliated, began internal reforms. The galaxy was not unified. It was awakened. The Terrans did not rule, but they remained, silent, present, waiting. And every time a distress call was sent into dark, the question echoed not with fear, but with a new kind of hope. Who will answer? The answer no longer needed to be Terran, because the echo had become a chorus, and the scream across the stars no longer marked the beginning of the end. It marked the beginning of a response.